Yo, and welcome to Stephen Retention. Let's go. I've got an interesting video for you guys today. It's a bit of a classroom lecture, and it's titled The Lonely Path of SR. So we're going to get into it. I'm going to flip the camera the other direction, and I'm going to show you basically why we end up on SR and why it becomes a lonely path. So let's get into it. As you can see here, there's quite a lot going on, so we're going to zoom into each section as we go. So welcome to the lonely path of SR. We start off, obviously, at birth. Birth, I've summarized between the age 0 to 11. That's our birth, and our proximity of associations is our family. That could be parents, brothers, sisters, step-parents, guardians, etc. The amount of people that we are involved in during this birth era, usually from the age of 0 to 11, is I'd say about 3 to 20. So that's basically your close family and your relatives, and maybe a couple of friends whilst you're growing up. After that, we go into adolescence from the age of 12 to 18. And we start to expand into more friends-based activities. This could be sporting clubs, etc., music clubs, etc., and the communities involved around that. Like maybe you're part of an art school, maybe you're part of something else. So that's the adolescence, right? And we have it could be anything. If you're a very, unpopular person, maybe about 5 people in your life to about 100 people in your life if you're very popular. Okay, so these numbers are important. We'll get to them in the second part of the presentation. So then we move into our adult years from the age of 18 plus, and that is when we have more peers. So we kind of lose friends and community, and we move into peers and career. So that's from the age of 18 plus. You could go into a trade from the age of 18, learn to become a builder. You could be, qualified, unqualified, entrepreneur, whatever. Okay, that's your adult years, is that you have more peers and you're more part of a career and an institution and an industry more so than you are part of a community, more so than you are part of a direct family. Okay, now this will make sense as we go on. And when you're in your adult years, you've now expanded from about 10 people to 1,000 people involved in your life. Like you could be part of a very big workforce, or you could be part of a small team. You could have a small kind of group and still get stuff done. So that kind of sets up what is going on from the get-go. That's our whole life spanning across there, okay? Then something happens. We have what we call an awakening, okay? An awakening is when our consciousness lights up. The awakening can occur from what I call trigger events, okay? Trigger events. These trigger events within my timeline, being born in 1995, the first trigger event was when I was 6 years old, and that was an act of terror that I witnessed on the television screen in 2001. And it involved this plane, and it involved 2 buildings, and it was branded as a terror incident. And what it did is it really highlighted things such as race. So it really brought to the forefront the topic of race. Okay. Now this was a trigger event, but being 6 years old, I wasn't really 100% aware. So then move forward to 2008. I'm now 13 years old, and there's a money incident that occurs in 2008. And this, noticed on the television screens. I was too young for it to really affect me, but I wasn't young enough for me to understand that they were talking about class. So far we've talked about race and class by the age of 13. These are trigger events that really highlight what's going on. And then 2016, I'm actually a bit more older. I'm of age. I'm 21 years old. I've already graduated from school, and now someone gets in charge of the US, and his election was victorious, and he becomes the president. And in 2016, it really highlighted politics, and it really highlighted what is politics and what are our beliefs. And it really, now we've got three things that could have been trigger events, and that was my trigger event. Mainly in 2016, that was when I thought we were living in the Matrix, so to speak, because this guy that got elected as the president, he was a TV dude. He wasn't a politician. So I was like, what's the go with that? That was one of my main trigger events. Now, keep in mind, prior to 2016, I did have other trigger events, which I'll highlight over here. But yeah, that was the politics event that really triggered it for me, making me think, wow, we really are living in a matrix. It's like a simulation. It's weird. Fast forward 4 years later, we have another trigger event, and it is a virus, and it highlights health. So these main 4 trigger events over the course of under 20 years highlighted race, class, beliefs, and health. And the reason why this is important to SR is because when you start practicing SR, you start to understand a lot more about these 4 topics. Now, another trigger event could be more personal and not on a timeline. It's not on these, I guess you could say, I'm not going to say they're scripted, but let's just say they are part of a historic text if we were reading a history book, and these were the trigger events in history, right? So these ones have nothing to do with the collective. These are all personal trigger events. Love, heartbreak can trigger an awakening, and also hitting rock bottom can trigger an awakening. So this here is a tab that you put on your tongue, and it represents a psychedelic experience which can trigger an awakening, and that could be something, also smoked, Mary Jane, all that kind of stuff. These can trigger an awakening. Now, awakening is basically shedding light onto something and providing more definition and resolution, so that way we can interpret this information that is there. So once you have this kind of spark awakening moment, then you start to look at these trigger events and make your mind up about what was going on around here. And also you make your mind up about what happened when you got your heart broken, and why did you hit rock bottom, and what did you make up of that whole experience that you had when you were under a psychedelic, influence. Then you also start to question things like, what am I drinking? I might choose water. Okay, now, what if I choose a different type of water that is more pure and less tampered with? And it's not soda water, it's not lemonade cordial, it's not, diet cordial, it's not apple juice, it's not this and that. It's just, this is the least amount of tampered water that I can drink. And you start drinking water. Then you start eating healthier food, natural organic food. Or you start consuming media that's good for you, like maybe getting into self-help books and all these kind of things. Then you start learning from mentors, whether they're online or, over the phone, or someone that you actually meet in person. Then you start working on your body. Then you start looking into your spirit and meditating and all these kind of things. And these start to really amplify the light of which is your awakening. So when you start doing all these things, eventually you get onto the path of SR. And so now that you're on the path of SR, you now look at your vices and you're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go partying. I don't want to go dating. I don't want to, waste my time on social media. I don't want to look at this adult media, triple X kind of stuff. So now you have entered the path of semen retention, and it took a lot. It took a lot to get there. You had to go through birth, adolescence, maybe you're an adult now, and then you had to go through some trigger events and also personal events. And then you started questioning all these things that you were doing on a day-to-day basis, from what you consumed to how you took care of your mind and your soul, and to who you were interacting with, dating, Yeah, I should write another one, which would be friends. Who are your friends? Who are your friends that you hang out with in your adolescence and your adult years, and your peers? Who are they? Who's your community? Who are they? Who's your career, industry people? What are they like? So then you start to question all these things, and that's natural, completely natural part of semen retention. So let's go into part 2. So if you have a look at this diagram here, we've got this kind of onion-looking diagram, and in the middle is SR, and that's me. That's Stephen Retention sitting right there in the middle. And we're going to talk about how the lonely path of SR gets you right here. And all of this is going to disappear. So first thing I want to talk about is on the external layer, and that's like nationality, and I guess you could also put things here like skin color, background, your gender, your race, your religion, all that kind of stuff becomes kind of irrelevant when you start practicing SR. So you stop caring about people's nationality. That's why in YouTube, if you're actually practicing semen retention, the people that you subscribe to are probably very different to you. Like for me, my favorite SR commentators are Shaved Lion King, who, if he wants to correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he's of African American descent. I don't know, not going to make assumptions, but he's definitely not the same kind of nationality as I am, or same kind of background, right? Then I also subscribe to SR and BG, who is an African American, and then I also subscribe to Regal Change, who is a white dude from Utah. I never care about what people look like. I just care about the message and their energy, and that's a huge kind of thing, because when you're on a lower level of consciousness, you're a racist. You care about other people's race. You care about the fact that someone's a man, and you hate someone because they're a man, or you hate someone because they're a woman. You hate someone because they're homosexual, or you hate someone because they're this and that. It's like, you don't necessarily have to agree with things that people do and their lifestyles, but when you're on SR, you don't hate someone, and you don't put yourself in that low vibration. So we're going to remove this outer layer of nationality, and which could have things like personality traits and identity and belonging to certain kind of belief systems and stuff like that, right? Like religion and maybe you're anti this, anti that, right? So we're going to get rid of that layer. So now that we've got rid of the layer of nationality, suddenly these 1,000 people that we would associate with now in our adult years is shaved off a little bit. Let's say it's gone down a little bit by 10%, because 10% of those 1,000 people are attached to people's identity, race, sexual orientation, their gender, etc., all those kind of things, right? So now you only have 900 people, And now we go to the next outer layer of our onion, which is industry. I work in the music industry, and majority of the people in the music industry, uh, they're struggling with alcoholism, hedonism, just drinking, partying, drugs, women or men, depending whatever they want. It's always a cheap thrill they're looking for. A lot of them don't practice any sort of spirituality. A lot of them don't look after their body. And a lot of them are narcissistic. They have very fragile egos. And yeah, there's also people within the industry like consumers and clients that you're going to face that are also unreliable, not really good at managing whatever they need from you. So we're going to shave off this layer because you start to lose more people that you realize that you don't want to associate with these people anymore because they're all negative, low vibrational people in your industry. And even though you're part of an industry, you don't care for these people. So we're going to take off another 10% of the industry. And this also includes consumers and clients. So yeah, let's take off another 10%. So we lost another 10% of the 1,000 people, so now we're down to 800 people. And I'm going to rub out this outer layer as well. Now we go into a less professional aspect, which is more to do with our community and our peers. Community is the place that we've come from, or where currently reside, and our peers are the people within our community or location that kind of, they live a very similar lifestyle to us. I live near a beach, so people in my community like going to the beach. I grew up in this area where we play specific types of sports, so the people in my community play these specific type of sports. People in my community have specific kind of religious beliefs. They'll eat certain foods, they'll have a barbecue in a couple of weeks when we celebrate Australia Day, right? So when you're on SR, you start to think about what is the importance of all these community type of beliefs. So community, we talk about a game called AFL, Australian Rules Football, which is kind of like NFL if you're an American, but we kick the ball as well. And like basketball, the NBA, we also have the NBL, and we've also got cricket, and we also like tennis and all that kind of stuff, and surfing and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of emphasis on these sporting events in the community. There's also a kind of belief system that we've got within the community, like, better than anyone else. And especially when you start leveling up on SR, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb because your energy is going to be confrontational to these people. In Australia, we have a thing called tall poppy syndrome, which means that when the sunflower raises higher than the other sunflowers, it's natural for that sunflower to be cut down a few inches so that it's on the same level as everyone else. So this is what's going to happen in your community. This is what's going to happen with your peers. They're going to try and cut you down, and you've got to learn to take it. You got to learn to resist their hate. You got to learn to resist their, methods of boxing you in and all this kind of stuff. So this is when we start to detach from community and peers, and we no longer care about them. So we're going to lose another, community, that would be probably about at least another 10%. But, I'm not even really caring about the numbers here, but I'm going to take off another 200, okay? So we're going to take off 20% for the community and the peers. So now we're at 600 people from the maximum 1,000 people that we reached in our adult years. And we're refining ourselves down getting close to our pure spirit as much as we can. And we've got our, what I call the external family, EXT fam, external family, which also encompasses our friends. Okay, so friends being a plural, meaning, the multiple people that we've kind of associate with. So when I was on my SR journey, I had close friend, or maybe two. I'd usually have one best friend, and then that would be like a rotating kind of role over every two years. I'd have like a new best friend. It would be like almost like a ladder system, like someone that I like more than someone else moves up the ladder and they become my best friend now. You know what I mean? And it's like I'm not playing games or anything like that. It just kind of naturally, that's kind of how it felt to me. So I'm not talking about those best friends. I'm talking about those friends that are people that you'd invite over for your birthday, but you might not necessarily see maybe more than once or twice a year or something like that. So now you've also got your external family, which is like your cousins, your uncles, your aunties, all those kind of people, that are kind of part of your family, but again, you might only see them once a year at Christmas or something like that. So this, these people are paying attention to you on social media. They might like a few things that you're doing. They might pay attention to what you post. They understand what you've been doing with your life. They know how to have a conversation with you. But as soon as you start going on SR, like they it's almost like that kind of fake smile thing where you see that smile or how you're going, and it's that kind of energy where you know that like they didn't want to have a conversation with you. It's just that you're both in the same vicinity, that you have to kind of strike up something together. So these kind of people, they're kind of like, they're feeling that envy and that jealousy a lot more than your community and all that kind of stuff, that and your peers that try to cut you down, and the people in your industry and stuff who might feel envious for like a week or two, but like these people will feel envious. Your external family and your friends will feel envious for like years, because if you keep on practicing SR for a prolonged period of time, you're going to have to keep reacquainting with your external family at events like Christmas, and you're going to have to keep seeing those friends that you thought you're all cool with. But when you start leveling up, when you start living a life and being more awake, you start seeing those fake smiles. You start feeling that energy of people just not necessarily wanting to be there, because there's something different about you. Or they'll say things like, "Oh, you're too much," or something like that, as a way of like kind of putting it onto you, when it's actually more of a reflection of them not being able to process the evolution of yourself that is kind of threatening their existence. So, yep, that's your external family and friends, and you're going to lose them on semen retention. It's just honest. I'm just being honest here. It's what happened to me. So we're really exaggerating now. We've lost another 50% worth of people, all those friends and external family. If you had a big friendship group and a big family, then you've lost, about 500 people. I know there's people out there that have big families. So now we're into the last 10% of people that exist in your life. And we're into family and best friend. So if you were having a wedding, this would be the people that you're sitting on the same table with, So family is an interesting one. These last couple of layers are very interesting, because unless you want to do full dissociation and full cut off from these people, you might be having to live with these uncomfortable interactions for years, maybe even a decade, now that you're on SR, because you've woken up so much now that it's like you see all the mistakes of your father and your mum, and you see all the mistakes of your brother and your sister, and you read their energy, and you you've known them your whole life, and you know all the things that you lived with as a family together, and all the ways that you interacted with them, and all this kind of stuff. And like now you're starting to question a lot of things, and you're not going to be holding things against your parents in a sense that like, oh, you did this to me. But it's also like you kind of think to yourself that it might be best for me to start my own kind of family and start my own kind of, kingdom and experience or dynasty with new people involved that are high vibrational. Because the fact of the matter is that, some families stay together, but they're dysfunctional. They're without love. They don't really have a high vibration at all. They're not going to be practicing SR or celibacy. They're not going to be thanking the Most High. They're not going to be even believing in God. In fact, a lot of them will even mock God, and, they'll be narcissistic and all this kind of things, because that's the kind of era that we're living in. So family is definitely something that you're going to have to make a decision on if you want to continue practicing semen retention. So that's going to be taken out at some point. Best friend, this is the guy that, you could talk about, maybe you're doing SR on and you got them to try for a little bit, but they can't do it. And then you realize that you're just like, well, hang on, like, why am I even trying anymore? Like, why do I hang out with this person? Like, why do I tell him what's going on? Why do I confide in someone that doesn't even have any sort of experience, that doesn't even like want to improve their life, that doesn't even want to, do simple things to enhance their life? Like, why do I keep hanging around this one dude that is basically a dead weight and stuck in a loop? Why would I want to hang around this person whose life is already paved out and scripted for him? Like, it just seems like a waste of time. This guy's an energy thief. You might want to know more about your interactions and all that kind of stuff, and he might be gossiping to that old outer sphere that you used to be part with, those friends that you've cut off, and that community that you cut off, and your industry people that you cut off, and this best friend might even be the link to those outer spheres, and is providing information about you that you might not necessarily want it to be spread. So yes, that's why on SR you're going to have to even cut off the best friend at some point, and that's just it's a tough pill to swallow, but it is what it is. So we're at our last 10 people of the original 1,000, and they are our partner and our children. So let's say we had a partner, a wife, and 9 children. Stephen Retention got to work. But, like that kind of thing is also going to be something that you're going to have to come to terms with. And this is a very deep philosophical ending, okay? This is the same way that you entered from birth. You entered with nothing. You will exit with nothing. Your partner, she needs to be understanding of this practice. She needs to understand that you only want to do it to procreate, or you don't even want to procreate, and you just want to use this as a practice to channel your energy to reach higher versions of yourself. So, it's uncomfortable for some people to really comprehend, but this is a practice that only enlightened souls, or at least souls that are aiming for enlightenment, will carry on through. So if your partner is willing to accept that about you and willing to support you on your journey and, be the mother of your children and do all those kind of things, then you've really found something special. And you should be proud of that. And you can create a new reality and a new community a new friendship group, a new, career pathway, blah, 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 with this new energy that you've cultivated from a more simplistic source rather than being externally influenced by these people that you were born into, this community that you were born into, this industry that you were born into, right? So now you're starting from the source and expanding out, which is essentially why we're on this lonely path of semen retention, is that we're, despite it might seem like us removing all the onion layers, what is actually happening is the core of us is expanding outwards. And as a result, it's pushing away those things that actually don't resonate with who we are. And when that happens, those outer layers, those cast members, those people in your life, of your movie or whatever, they're going to be replaced with people that actually resonate with what you're doing. So, when you build something with your partner and you have children and she's respective of this practice, then you're in real luck. You're a very lucky man. Yeah, I haven't experienced that, so I can't really talk much about it. But for me personally, I'm more than happy to wait at least 10 years until I, want to have children. I'm happy to wait at least 10 years because I want to see how far I can go with SR. And I think having children in my 40s, in my early 40s, like when I hit 40, would be a great time because, I still have a long time to raise my children up. And also, I will have accumulated a lot of knowledge, wisdom, wealth, health, and just a lot of energy and aura that is what children need. So then you want to be like subtly educating your children and telling them about this practice and keeping them on that straight and narrow path. So then the next, phase of evolution has got a generation and they're aware of this practice, and hopefully that aura that you've created and that community that you've created from being your authentic self can expand and can propagate into creating a whole new world of high vibrational beings and human beings, of course. So that's what I would be thinking about as a way of bringing children into this planet, is to really try and educate them and let them express themselves as their most authentic selves, and barring them from the influences of the deceptive system that we've got, such as the things in our media and in our education system and all that kind of stuff. So still, these two things, your partner and your children, are going to have to go away one day because you're going to be left by yourself as you transcend this reality. So in negative circumstances, maybe you lost your partner and maybe your children when you're practicing this because you found out of SR during your marriage and after you'd had kids. So maybe you are the last man standing, number one. You're the final thing left. And this is the lonely path of SR. This is anyone. You don't have to be married or, divorced or have kids or not have kids. This can be any man, can be the last man and is on the lonely path of semen retention. This is the environment of opportunity. This is the realm of opportunity. This is the realm of God. God is opportunity. God is inspiration and imagination. This is the closest you can ever get to God, is by yourself. So, you have no external things influencing you anymore. You just have your body, and then you start to pull down all these things that no longer resonate with you. And it's going to get to the point where you're probably just going to be literally sitting in a bedroom in your underwear thinking, okay, this is all there is. Like you're gonna think to yourself, there's not much more to do. You've already stripped back everything. You understand who you are at the purest point, that you're gonna get to a point where you're just like, there's not much more for me to do. So this is when you kind of you've kind of transcended the matrix, but now you can come back into the matrix with these sort of eyes where you're just like, I'll just either play a role, pretend to care, or you'll try and educate people, and you'll try and lead them towards enlightenment in subtle ways. Because remember, if you've done all this stripping back of the layer and of the ego and all this kind of stuff, it can be too confrontational for you to share this pure energy at this point, to someone that's maybe only at a point of questioning their industry and not ready to question their friends and their all that kind of stuff, right? So it's important for you to understand ways to really communicate with other human beings as to how you can put them on this path without scaring them, because your energy is already quite intimidating. So that's basically all I want to say here. I don't want to rabbit on too long because it's a very long video, but this is, I guess you could say, this is probably just, part 2 of maybe even potentially 3 parts. I might do a final part to this just to kind of summarize this again. But this is the lonely path of semen retention, and you've been listening to Stephen Retention. Hope you all have a great time. Let me know what you think in the comments. Catch you later. Bye.